Welcome back, folks, to the seedy underbelly of YouTube, where we talk about the topic of hobby small arms ammunition manufacturing. And today we are going to continue to thumb our nose at authority and talk about this topic by continuing our quest in 308 Winchester to duplicate this stuff. This is the federal gold medal match with the 175 grain Sierra Match King. Hopefully you saw the last video where we shot this stuff and we picked a powder in IMR 4064, which is exactly what we think Federal uses in their ammo. And we kind of started low, worked our way up. Here's the load data from the last video. Our max charge in that video was 42.0 grains. That gave us right about 2,545 feet per second. The best news is that the best accuracy we saw was at that max charge of 42.0 grains. Now in the last video, we made up this chart to kind of help us predict about what the charge weight we would need for this load is, and it came out just a little bit above 42.5 grains. So the plan for today's video is just to continue working our way up with IMR 4064. Our starting charge today is going to be our max charge from the last video. We're going to duplicate that 42.0 grain load, and then we're going to move up in 0.2 grain increments, which puts us maxing out at 42.8 grains, which happens to be exactly Sierra's maximum charge with IMR 4064. It should be good stuff. Now also in the last video, we were shooting Lapua brass. This is an old batch of brass that has quite a few firings on it and isn't that far from retirement. So if we bang it up and tear up the brass with gas adjustments or just general problems in breaking in our new barrel, we wouldn't have to worry too much because it was an old batch of brass. Now, we showed in the last video what our next brass choice is going to be. This is going to be some IMI Match 762x51 brass that was generously donated by a viewer. But I ran a poll to see what you guys thought about the brass situation, whether I should do one more video with the Lapua and kind of finish out this IMR 4064 load with Lapua, or if we should just go ahead and switch over to the IMI. The results were 70-30 in favor of continuing in today's video with the Lapua brass. So thanks to you guys for chipping in on the poll. We had 221 votes. 150 people wanted to stick with Lapua, or 154, and 67 wanted to switch. I couldn't make up my own mind, so I'm glad you guys helped me. Those of you that voted to switch to the IMI, don't worry, man. We're going to circle back around and we're going to shoot IMR 4064 in this brass. No doubt about it, so no worries there. Now, another suggestion that was made in the comments section of the last video was to go ahead and load up the Federal brass that we recovered from the factory ammo and see how it performs at 42.4 grains, because that's what we recovered when I tore one of these guys apart. But the thing to keep in mind is I only tore apart one. For a box of factory ammo like this, you're going to see several tenths of charge weight variation, no doubt about it. So 42.4 grains is what we pulled out of the one we pulled. So I don't know. I think we'll go ahead and do that today. I'll load up 10 of these pieces of brass with the 42.4 grains and we'll just see what happens. We are using a different primer, of course, than, you know, the Federal would be a Federal primer. We're using CCI primers. So that will be one difference as we use the Federal brass to see how that charge shoots. All right, I think I've talked enough. One thing I want to do, I've got Lapua brass, I've got Federal brass, and I've got our new IMI Match brass. Let's do some quick case capacity measurements. All right, first of all, I've got 3 pieces of brass that I went ahead and put a primer in, one of each type. Now, a one-piece sample is not exactly the best in this case. I'm not really looking for minor differences. I'm looking for major differences. So I just want to test one of them really quick. First of all, we need a scale, and we need to turn that scale on. Can you guys read that? All right, this is the piece of Lapua. It's starting out at 179.3. We need to bring in some water and fill this guy up. Oops, it snuck up on me. Working around a camera is a lot of fun. All right, so I dried off the body of the case, which is important. If you've got water running down the side of the case or whatever, it'll throw off your measurement. But that's where we're at right now. And of course, whenever I want glare, I can't get it. But it's full of water and a little bit concave right now. So this little syringe I'm using, just going to try to get one more little drop in there. Whoop, too much. Siphon off a little bit. Sometimes when I get it like this, I'll just kind of get my finger and continue to do that until the level's down to where I want it. I think that looks just about right. Yep, she's full. So now let's weigh this guy. 235.3. Can you guys even see that? Probably not. All right, so if we go 235.3 minus 179.3, we get 56. So I'll tell you what, let me do these other two cases without the camera in my way, and then we'll tally up the results. All right, here's how the numbers came out. The Lapua did end up having the most capacity, followed by the Federal 308 brass. I also pulled out a piece of Starline that I had fired in this gun. It was still dirty. I don't think that would screw up the measurements too much, but it came third at 54.4 grains, and the least case capacity was the IMI match at 53.4 grains. One extremely important thing to keep in mind here, the IMI brass has not been fired. It's brand new brass. All of this other stuff is fired brass from my gun. So this IMI is going to pick up quite a bit of capacity, and I would guess after being fired, it'll probably be pretty close to the Starline. Now, a couple other ways to look at this, if we look at it as like percentage change, the Federal is 1.1% less capacity than the Lapua, Starline's 2.9, and the IMI is 4.6% less. That's a lot, right? 4.6%. So here's another way to look at it. I pulled out some Alliant Power Pro 2000 MR. It's a spherical powder. What you see here is a 56.0 grain charge of 2000 MR. You can see IMI right up to the top of the neck and Lapua a pretty good ways down it. So these are significant differences. This is why this gets to be a big deal and something we need to keep in mind of as we move forward with 308. And you as an audience are going to have to keep in mind. A load you see me test or work up here with Lapua, if you try it in military brass, you might just get yourself into trouble. That much less case capacity is a serious pressure difference, right? All right, enough of that, I think. What I want to talk about next is brass resizing. Now what I've got I want to look at first is this is a piece of Lapua brass that we fired in our JP barrel. This guy has been fire formed to the JP. This is a piece that has been fire formed to my Tikka bolt action rifle. So I want to take a few measurements and compare them. I've got several examples of each. The first measurement I want to look at is just kind of like right here below the shoulder. With the JP brass, 456. Take a couple measurements in a few different spots. Yep, looks like 456. We'll grab a second piece just to make sure. It is 456. Now the Tikka, 456 and 456. So these two chambers, looks like right about there, we've got the same number. So let's flip it around and look at the base right about there. Man, my camera is being stupid. It doesn't want to focus properly. 473, this is still the Tikka brass. 472, and the JP is 471. And the second piece is 471. So as far as body dimensions go, our JP barrel appears to be just a tiny little bit tighter than the Tikka, but very, very close to one another. So the next place to look is headspace. Cartridge base up here onto the shoulder with the D400 insert in our Hornady headspace comparator. All right, let's get this guy zeroed. Looks good. Here's our Tikka, 1.622. 1.621 and 1.622. So we'll call it 1.622 for the Tikka. For the JP, here's a 1.625, 1.626, 1.626. Good. So the JP barrel has got around 4 thousandths more headspace than my Tikka. So they're both pretty skinny in the body, but the JP is a little bit taller. Now this can be a problem, because the longer your headspace, the higher out your die needs to be so you don't bump your shoulder too much. And what you can run into sometimes is that when you adjust your die to properly bump your shoulder a couple thousandths, the body of the case just doesn't get far enough into the die to size the body as much as you need. Does that make sense? So this is this can be a tricky combo where we seem to have a reasonably tight-bodied chamber, but headspace maybe a touch on the long side. When compared to my Tikka, I'm not saying it's out of spec. I bought the bolt with the barrel, JP headspaced it. I'm certainly not saying it's out of spec. I'm just saying that it can be a tough situation on the sizing die side of things. And someone in the comments section of the last video actually mentioned they have a JP barrel and they needed to go to a small base resizing die because the chamber was too tight and he was getting malfunctions, I think he said. So far so good, right? I mean, our gun's been running fine, but if we do run into function problems, we'll have to speak more on this subject, and a small base die could be the answer. So I've already set up my die. Here's a piece of Lapua that I have resized. So let me show you the differences in our measurements. The headspace, right, around that 1.625 number, And the resized piece is down around 1.621, I think is what we're gonna see here with most of these guys. 1.621. So I bumped these around 4 thousandths of an inch. I might have gone 2 or 3, but I decided to go ahead to 4, and my camera battery died. Where were we? I think we were talking about, yeah, the headspace on my resizing die setting. I may be bumping 1 thousandth or 2 more than I would like, but I just wanted to get the case up into the die. There was a bit of space between the shell holder and the bottom of the resizing die, right? So I just wanted to do what I could to get it up in there. You might ask yourself, okay, well, your 308 die, how much does it resize when you screw it all the way down? Here's a piece that I had screwed down enough. I was getting firm contact with the shell holder, but not camming over too hard, right? Just kind of a nice full resize from that die, and I'm getting 1.615. So hopefully you kind of get what I'm talking about here. But the ultimate test is going to be the body dimensions. See, what did we say here? Below the shoulder, 456. Our sized piece is 453. Good, so it looks like we've got enough clearance there at the shoulder. Now let's look down here near the web of the case. Sized piece is 470 or 469. Let me get it in here just a little bit better. Yeah, let's call it 470. And our pre-sized piece is 471 down there. So I think we're good, you know, on our resize. And like I said, so far, we haven't had any function problems that I've related to brass. So I think my die is tight enough to do the job. But if you're going through a similar sort of thing and having function issues, this exercise of comparing your fired brass versus what's coming out of your die can be important on deciding whether you need a small base sizing die. All right, folks, we've talked about this stuff enough. We've covered the important part of sizing here. We covered bullet seating in the last video. The die is still in the press from that video. I'm not going to touch it. I'll double check the readings, but nothing exciting there. So I think we should just jump forward over all of the boring stuff and go ahead and get out on the range. So of course it's been sunny and beautiful all day long until I come out here to shoot, and now it's looking like some storms are rolling in. Hopefully they'll stay away. Our gun is an Aero Precision M5 E1 setup with a JP SuperMatch barrel. This is a 20-inch barrel with a 1 in 10 twist. Everything is just as it was whenever we finished the last video. The suppressor is still on. The gas is still tuned for suppressor use, kind of. We never quite got it where we wanted it in the last video. So I'm going to be continuing to tweak on the gas a little bit here while we've got the suppressor on. The first load I want to shoot is in the Federal brass that we recovered from the factory ammo. This is 42.4 grains of 4064. I think the only difference in this load should be the primer. We're using a CCI primer where they, of course, would have used a Federal primer. So let's see how this does. We'll use it to warm up the gun. It is completely cold and dirty. Like I said, I haven't touched it since the last video. Let's get started. Oh, one thing I do want to change really quick. I want to move the scope 1 minute to the right. Our groups in the last video were just a touch left. So, all right, let's get started. So that's not a terrible way to start. Our velocity, 2590, which matches the factory ammo velocity almost perfectly. It's just a couple feet per second higher than we saw. The group wasn't anything spectacular, but then again, it wasn't embarrassing either. Not bad for a cold bore, I guess. So let's move on to our reloads. First up is going to be 42.0 grains. This is a duplication of the last load we shot in the last video, which was 2,545 feet per second. So we'll see if we get similar numbers today. Ah, dang it. All right, I didn't lock the bolt back, so I need another gas adjustment. So we seem to have a bit of a velocity jump today. That 42.0 grain load is 2,574 feet per second, where last time it was 2,545. That's pretty weird. Well, it's starting to rain, so I need to make a decision of whether to grab the cameras and run inside or try and do one more group before I have to do that. Let's go ahead and shoot. 42.2 grains. Yeah, I think I reached a point where I've got the gas just about perfect. The gun's just barely running, barely locking the bolt back, but I'm still seeing ejector mark damage on the brass. So it's unfortunate, and there were several people down in the comments of the last video that said they had given up on trying to shoot a suppressed AR-10 because it tears up brass. So I hope that's not always going to happen. I mean, it appears to be that way here with IMR 4064. There's just no gas setting that makes it work, but maybe other powders will be better. All right, it's still raining, but I think it's just going to be a sprinkle. I'm actually seeing some sun peek out, so maybe it'll blow over. I don't know. Take a break and look at the radar. All right, so the rain has passed, and I don't think any of my cameras are broken. So let's see, where were we? Okay, man. So our velocity is just higher today. I'm not sure why that is. 2581 feet per second for that last group. No, I guess our initial estimate in the last video was 42.5 grains would be 2590. So I guess we're not too far off, whatever. Yeah, whatever. Let's get back to shooting. Of course, that last shot screwed it all up. Dang it. So the velocity looks a little bit low on that one. You know, so the rain did come through. It's 10 or 15 degrees cooler now than it was. But also the first shot in that group was 2,533 feet per second. So that one shot kind of makes me question that number. All right, we're moving on. 42.6 grains is next. All right, folks, now we're talking. That is a very good group, and I have no explanation for this velocity. 3 of the 4 charges now have been 2,574 feet per second. It makes no sense. So last up is 42.8 grains. Let's see what happens. A little malfunction here. Doesn't seem to have screwed anything up. All right, so that's pretty good showing for the suppressor. The velocity finally jumped up to 2596, but maybe we're in one of those mythical regions where like 42 to 42.6, there's not a lot of velocity change. I don't know. I'll be interested to see if the same thing happens when we take the suppressor off. So what I need to do is let this guy cool down long enough for me to get that done. So let's do that. Okay, so our suppressor has been taken off. I've reset our adjustable gas block to the setting that was working so well in the last video, 5 turns out from bottomed out on the JP adjustable gas block. So first up is going to be our 42.4 grain load in the federal brass. So let's see how it does. Okay, the gun didn't go off. So yep, didn't get around in the chamber. Let's try one more. Yeah, empty chamber again. So I better open up the gas a touch more. Okay, let's try this. Okay, so that one was about 30 feet per second slower than the one we tested earlier when we were suppressed, but I think something else is going on here. And to be honest, I bet it has to do with my chronograph. Because when the rain came, I tore down my chronograph and took it out, and when I set it back up, maybe the angle is a little bit different. That's a possibility. I don't know. But okay, we're moving on to our Lapua brass. First up is 42.0 grains. See how it does. Yeah, so the chronograph only gave us 3 good readings that time. I'm running out of daylight here, so we might not be able to trust our chronograph readings from this point forward. Next video, we're probably going to need to introduce the magnetospeed chronograph and see how that guy affects groups with this barrel. Hopefully it'll be minimal and we can switch to using the magnetospeed, but that doesn't help us today. All right, next up, 42.2 grains. Yeah, our chronograph is useless at this point. But you know what? The last video, we already proved that the velocities really weren't changing as we added and removed the suppressor. So the numbers we got from earlier with the suppressor are fine to tell us what's going on, hopefully. Even though they were a little bit weird. Next up, 42.4 grains. $42.6. All right, last up, 42.8 grains. All right, folks, we made it before it got dark. Good. Let's get packed up, get back to the bench. All right, so this is going to be a confusing batch of brass to talk about, I guess. And the conversation might just stay confusing here with 308. Here's a couple pieces that I shot suppressed. See a little burr raised up on that guy. That one seems to be mostly okay. That guy has a burr as well. It continued throughout, all right? That's just the norm no matter what. And it didn't really seem to change much as we increased our charge weight today, so whatever. The only thing we're really left to look at here to judge pressure is the primer, and the primers seem just fine, nice and rounded. You know, maybe there's an argument here for using the softest primer we could find, or a softer primer than these CCI 200s, which have a reasonably hard cup. If brass damage at this point in our learning process is not going to be a reliable way to help judge pressure, then yeah, a soft primer that'll flatten on us might not be a bad idea. Now here are 3 pieces from our max charge without the suppressor. Now in the last video, we tuned the gas just right and didn't have any pressure signs on any of our brass when the gun was unsuppressed. What I decided to do today is turn the gas block way up. I didn't really talk about it all out on the range. It was getting dark. We didn't have a lot of time for me to flap my gums. So the point of the test, turning the gas way up, was to see whether this barrel and the gas port diameter and all of that garbage, I wanted to find out whether an adjustable gas block was really necessary. Some brass came out looking fine. These blue marks, I should have mentioned that. Some of these had ejector marks from the previous video and I marked them blue. So any damage that is not in a blue area, like that big old nasty ejector mark there, that one seems mostly okay. Yeah, that one got a little burr on it. That is all from today, and that was with the gas turned up without the suppressor. So it looks like suppressed or not, an adjustable block isn't a bad idea. So I think that's about it for brass. The AR-10 certainly seems to be a challenge when it comes to reading brass. We're going to have to learn as we go. All right, let's look at the groups and the velocities separately, and we'll do it all at once. Let's start with the group size. Can't help but be disappointed. We only shot one group under an inch today. That was our 42.4 grain load without the suppressor, which is the second line. And it's funny that it's right beside the worst group of the day, 42.6 grains without the suppressor at 1.778 inches. So folks, I think we'd have to call this a little bit disappointing, or quite a bit disappointing. So we did see our best group with the suppressor at 42.6 grains, 1.025 inches. and without the suppressor, it was 42.4. So maybe that 42.5 region is what we should maybe pick as a load, I guess. I mean, the groups weren't good, but at least they were consistent, I guess. There's not a clear winner on today's target, at least. Let's look at the limited amount of velocity data we do have. Our best light, daylight, you know, for our chronograph to work was the top row with the suppressor, and that's where we got those strangely consistent readings in that 2574 to 2581 range for our first 4 groups. You know, I thought about trying to pull out all the raw numbers of each shot, and maybe we put it on a chart and see if maybe we can see something, but I gotta be honest, I don't trust the chronograph from today. I think we had a temperature swing that was significant. We had wildly varying light. You know, some of these were in sunlight and others were extremely dark. So I just don't trust. I think we got some wonky readings today. So unfortunately, I don't know what to take out of all of this. I think the next video we introduce the magneto speed and we see if the magneto speed seems to be affecting groups at all, because, you know, looking back at all the groups and the groups from the last video, and it doesn't seem to be making a whole lot of difference whether we have the suppressor on or off. There's not enough point of impact shift to worry about at 100 yards. The velocity is the same in both scenarios, so I just don't think it's making much difference. Next video, we'll strap the magneto speed chronograph on there and kind of look at the same thing, see if it makes any difference. Most of my other barrels, it doesn't make any difference at all, and we use it most of the time here on the channel, so hopefully we'll find the same thing here. Big heavy profile barrel, I got a feeling it'll be just fine. So I think we need one more video with IMR 4064. And I think we ought to maybe tweak this overall length a little bit. 2.8 inches hasn't really given us the accuracy we're looking for with the 175 grain Match King, so it's time to play around with that a little bit. So we'll just make that the main subject of the next video, but I've started to think about what powder we should move on to next after IMR 4064. And other than our disappointing accuracy, the biggest thing I've taken out of this first couple videos is this brass damage situation when we put on the suppressor. So that's what's been going through my head, is wondering whether somewhere along the list of powders available to us are some options that'll work okay suppressed in the AR-10. So I've come up with three candidates for our next test powder, and we're going to run a poll. The first is IMR 4895. Should be just about perfect for this scenario. It's just a touch faster than IMR 4064, I believe. Our charge weights will be a grain or so less probably on the top end, but should be a pretty good performer, and we'll definitely be testing it at some point. The other option would be to go much faster burning. Hodgdon Benchmark. If the burn rate chart is to be believed, Benchmark is significantly faster burning. It should have a significantly different gas profile, I would think. So if we know 4064 really didn't work out, maybe significantly faster would work better suppressed. Same thing on the slow side. Here's some Hodgdon H4831SC. This is the slowest powder that Sierra has load data for. With this bullet, we could try this stuff. Again, it should have a significant gas difference to IMR 4064, I would think. So that's kind of what's been going through my mind. So that'll be the poll. What powder should we go with next? Benchmark 4895 or 4831SC? Fast, medium, or slow? Okay, outside of that, anything else to talk about? Our test with the Federal brass, the groups were about the same size. You saw them on the target there, right? I don't think I mentioned them, but it didn't really seem to make much difference. We already showed earlier in the video, case capacity wise, there was like a 1% difference. So we didn't really see much change there, did we? So not much to really report there. All right, folks, I think that covers it for now. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time.